English from A to Z.
It's great to be back.
We are jumping immediately into the deep end today. We're going to be confronting what is, I think, arguably the single largest barrier to fluency.
Oh, for sure.
That intense, sometimes, paralyzing fear of speaking English out loud.
It's the moment of truth for millions of learners, isn't it? They can spend years, diligently studying. They can read Shakespeare. They can write these amazing emails. They can understand really complex movies.
Right.
But then when it's time to actually open their mouths in a real conversation, it's like a switch just flips and that fear completely locks down the language part of their brain.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this isn't just like simple shyness. We're talking about a genuine physiological reaction, a psychological reaction. It's that moment. You're in a coffee shop or a meeting, and you know the exact words you need. You know the grammar perfectly.
You've studied it 100 times.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But your heart rate just instantly shoots up. Your hands get cold. You feel this like wave of heat, and your mind just goes completely blank. It feels like a high-stakes performance every single time.
And that suite of feelings is exactly what we need to unpack today. It's the nervousness, it's the intense shyness, the genuine fear that people are judging you, the obsessive worry about the tiniest grammatical slip-up, and just that overriding feeling of embarrassment.
The core pain point, I think, is that deep-seated belief that every single person listening,
Yes.
whether it's a native speaker, another learner, a colleague, you feel like they're running this like real-time assessment of your competence.
Constant audit.
Exactly. So if that description resonates with you at all, then you are precisely who we've built this deep dive for. Our mission today is to go way beyond simple motivation. We're extracting every single actionable step, every psychological insight, and every mindset shift from the material to create a clear, step-by-step guide.
We want to empower you to help you feel confident, relaxed, and just ready to engage.
And we want to start with that engagement right now, because that physical feeling of fear is often the first and, the most disruptive block.
Right.
We want to encourage you to do the first crucial action right now. If you feel that familiar tightness, that anxiety that comes with just thinking about speaking, just stop.
And take a long, slow, deep breath in.
Really fill your lungs.
And then a slow, controlled breath out. That initial physical regulation, it's the key to unlocking your brain. And it sets a calm, receptive tone for the rest of this dive. So listen carefully as we break this all down.
Okay, let's get straight into it. Section 1. This provides the psychological foundation we need before any tactics. The reality is, you are not alone.
This is the non-negotiable first step, this foundational reassurance. If you feel this shyness, this nervousness, this fear, you are not failing.
No.
You are just encountering a completely natural biological response to cognitive strain.
Right.
We are talking about millions upon millions of English learners all over the world who are wrestling with this exact same anxiety. Understanding the sheer scale of this shared experience, it's staggering, but it's also incredibly liberating.
And what's really fascinating from the research we looked at is that this anxiety isn't just for beginners.
Not at all.
We kind of assume that once a learner hits, like a B2 or C1 level, that the fear just evaporates. But the source material highlights this surprising fact. Even advanced speakers sometimes feel profoundly shy or nervous.
That's such an important point. For a beginner, the anxiety might be about, not remembering a simple verb.
Sure.
For an advanced speaker, the anxiety often shifts. It's less about grammar and more about professional or social competence.
Okay, so what does that look like?
Well, we read this story about an experienced interpreter. This person could flawlessly translate like a high-level political speech,
Wow, okay.
but still struggled with immense self-consciousness when they were just ordering a cappuccino in a crowded cafe.
That context switch is crucial. Why would ordering a coffee, which is so low stakes, cause more anxiety than translating for a diplomat?
It's the difference between performance and personal identity. In that formal setting, the interpreter is operating in a rigid, known framework. They're a professional, they're following rules.
Right, there's a script.
Exactly. In the casual coffee shop setting, they are forced to use the language to express their personal needs, their identity, often in front of unfamiliar people. And that vulnerability, plus the pressure to be spontaneous without planning, it triggers the anxiety, even if their linguistic skill is perfect.
So it becomes less about, can I speak English?
And more about, will my personality translate correctly? Will they accept my accent?
Okay, so let's unpack why this normalization matters so much. Because it's more than just a comforting thought, isn't it? It really changes your relationship with the fear itself.
Precisely. If you internalize this feeling, if you think it's some imposter syndrome that only you have, or that you're just uniquely shy,
Then the fear controls you.
right, it becomes a permanent self-imposed stop sign. It reinforces this negative self-image as a learner, and it stops you before you even try.
But the moment you realize, okay, this nervous feeling is a standard normal reaction to stepping outside my comfort zone.
To engaging my second language brain and risking failure.
The fear immediately loses its power. It goes from being a personal flaw to just an external obstacle that you can manage.
And this leads to the crucial pivot we found in the material. Fear is normal, but the important thing is to keep trying, even if that nervousness is still there at first.
So we're not aiming to get rid of the feeling immediately.
No, not at all. We are aiming for persistence in the face of the fear.
That's like going to the gym.
Right.
The muscle soreness and the rapid heartbeat you feel on day one are completely normal. They aren't signals that you should quit exercising forever. They're just signals that your body is adapting.
And the anxiety you feel when speaking English is your brain adapting to a new, higher cognitive load. You acknowledge the discomfort, but you push through it because you know that adaptation is the only way to get stronger.
And framing that shift, accepting the fear as this temporary normal companion, that's the essential first step before we can even get into tactics.
Right. Once you accept that the fear is there, you can focus on the action.
Yep.
And the next action is all about the source of most of this anxiety, the paralyzing fear of making mistakes.
This is where we confront the primary barrier head on. The research is so clear. The intense, debilitating fear of making mistakes is the #1 reason learners hesitate.
It's just drilled into us, isn't it? Often through competitive academic systems, to view errors as failures, as something that detracts from our grade or our competence.
But our source material insists on this, like radical paradigm shift. We have to see mistakes not as bad, but as a natural, necessary part of learning.
And this has to go from being a nice motivational phrase to an operational reality. Mistakes are not failures, they are diagnostic data points.
I love that phrase, diagnostic data points. It just instantly changes the whole emotional weight of the error, doesn't it?
It does.
A mistake isn't something to be embarrassed by. It's just information that shows you the exact location of the gap in your knowledge.
Think about it. If you never make a mistake, it means you are only operating inside this tiny, safe bubble of things you already know perfectly.
Where's the learning in that?
Exactly. The mistake is the moment your brain identifies the gap between what you meant to say and what actually came out. That friction is where learning happens.
So how do we actually process this
Yeah.
data? A data point needs analysis, not just an emotional reaction.
That's the key tactical step. When you make an error, instead of just feeling bad, classify it. Was it a lexical error? Meaning, I forgot a vocabulary word.
Okay.
Was it a morphological error? I got the verb tense wrong or the plural. Or was it a syntactic error where I put the words in the wrong order?
So by classifying the mistake, you move from feeling this general sense of failure to targeting a specific fixable issue.
Right. This lets you go back later after the conversation and review that one specific rule or that one specific word. It turns language learning into an efficient repair job instead of an emotional battle.
And the analogy they use in the source material, the comparison to babies learning to speak, it just reinforces this idea of iteration perfectly.
Oh, it's the best example. Think about the pure, uninhibited commitment of an infant.
Hmm.
They'll try a word, maybe they say card instead of drove,
Yeah.
which actually shows they understand the past tense rule even if they applied it to an irregular verb. And what do they get? They get encouragement, not judgment.
And their persistence, despite these constant systemic errors, is exactly why they eventually become fluent.
Yet as adult learners, because we have this awareness and this social conditioning, we demand instant, flawless performance from ourselves. We have to actively cultivate that baby's mindset.
Right.
Pure commitment to communication, uninhibited by the fear of making a mistake.
So we need to shed that academic weight that says an error equals incompetence.
Exactly. The adult learner is trying to integrate these incredibly complex automatic processes, the language center, with the slower, deliberate process of conscious correction. And until the language is automatic, errors are just. They're unavoidable. They are the essential signposts on the road to automaticity.
Which brings us to this liberating idea of shifting from perfection to communication. The underlying message here is pretty simple. People care way more about your message than the grammatical flaws you use to deliver it.
That is the ultimate truth in the real world. Unless you're grading an essay or taking an exam, the listener is focused on collaboration. They just want to understand you.
They're not running a real-time grammar audit.
No. They are far more likely to be annoyed by a lack of flow, by long hesitations, than by an imperfect verb tense.
Okay, but here's the challenge that comes up. If I'm preparing for a high-stakes setting, like a job interview or a technical presentation in English, I have to worry about grammar and precision, don't I?
That's an excellent question, and it highlights a common misunderstanding. Prioritizing flow doesn't mean ignoring grammar. It means prioritizing the speed of retrieval and just making sure your output is comprehensible.
So in those professional settings, what's the strategy?
The key is to practice the required language, the specific jargon, the formal structures, repeatedly before you're in that pressure moment.
So you practice the formal stuff until it becomes a kind of automatic flow, just like you would with everyday phrases.
Exactly. The initial mandate is always to communicate. Once communication is possible, then you can start the targeted refinement, classifying those professional errors and practicing them. But if you wait for perfect knowledge before you even try to communicate, you'll never get to the practice stage.
The mandate remains. Don't try to be perfect. Try to communicate first.
It prevents analysis paralysis, and it just speeds up the entire process.
All right, so now that we've handled the internal cytology, normalizing the fear, redefining mistakes, we can move on to the tactical steps. Mindset only gets you so far. What are the first baby steps a learner can take? We call this the confidence ladder.
The confidence ladder recognizes that confidence is not a feeling that just appears out of nowhere. It's built through repeated, low-stakes, successful experiences.
So if a long, complex conversation feels overwhelming,
You deliberately start with interactions that demand minimal cognitive effort and basically zero emotional risk.
okay, so let's get specific. We need to detail what low stakes really means and give some simple examples. These are the foundational building blocks.
Right. Safe, sometimes even rehearse sentences that establish connection without demanding any improvisation.
For example,
Think of interactions that are almost robotic, like the checkout at a supermarket. You're exchanging goods and money. You can practice one single sentence like, "Thank you, have a good day."
the cashier's response is highly predictable. The pressure is zero. You achieved success.
Or the classic elevator scenario. If you encounter someone, you can use these conversational anchors like, "Hello, how are you?" Or a comment on the weather. "It's a beautiful day, isn't it?"
These are like cultural lubricants. They're expected, they're easy, and they require simple, equally low-stakes responses. They let you practice the physical act of speaking without having to generate complex thoughts.
And we also have to look at self-advocacy phrases, stating a simple fact about yourself like, my name is, or, critically, I'm learning English, please speak slowly.
Oh, that last one is maybe the most valuable anchor of all.
For sure, it immediately sets the context for your speaking partner. It signals that patience is required. It's an act of self-advocacy that manages expectations before the fear can even set in.
What about participating in, say, a group conversation, but without having to carry the whole thing?
That's where short reaction phrases are perfect. You don't have to offer a 5-minute monologue. You can just use something like, I like your idea, or that's interesting.
Or even an expression of confusion, right? I didn't quite catch that. Could you repeat it?
Yes, those phrases let you participate, show you're engaged, and keep the conversation flowing, all while giving your brain time to process what's happening.
And the psychological payoff of these short conversations is what drives the confidence forward. When you successfully use, say, a 3-word phrase to a cashier, your brain releases a small surge of dopamine.
A reward signal.
Exactly. For achieving a goal. I spoke English, I was understood, and nothing terrible happened. That small win is the positive reinforcement that fuels the next, slightly bigger step.
And that's the transition to the next rung on the ladder. Once the anxiety with those simple, rehearsed phrases goes down, you move to generating slightly longer, less predictable sentences.
You start with 3-word phrases, move to 5-word phrases, maybe asking for directions, which is a bit more complex.
And you slowly increase the cognitive complexity, always using the last success as the launch pad for the next step up the ladder.
The beauty of this incremental approach is that it just systematically dismantles this huge, overwhelming task of speaking English fluently into manageable daily actions.
It transforms the process from a giant mountain you have to climb in one go into a series of small, achievable footholds, which immediately reduces the intimidation factor.
Okay, that brings us to section 4, which introduces a resource that I think a lot of learners overlook because they feel so dependent on other people.
The hidden resource of practicing entirely on your own. The source material really emphasizes that you do not always need a native speaker or a conversation partner. You can practice completely with yourself first.
This is the ultimate low-pressure zone. You're the only listener, the only judge, the only critic. This is where you can let go of that paralyzing fear of external judgment and just focus purely on producing the language.
And we have to give the listener some concrete, detailed scenarios for talking to themselves at home. This isn't just like a passive internal monologue. It requires actually externalizing the language, hearing your own voice forming the words.
Building muscle memory in your mouth.
Right.
Okay, so for example, you could use descriptive actions in the present continuous tense as you're doing them. If you're making a meal, you narrate it.
I'm cooking dinner. I need to chop the vegetables. I'm pouring water into the pot. This links the language directly to a concrete, real action, which just accelerates retention.
What about scenarios that force you to use different, more challenging grammar?
Yeah, for sure. You could practice stating needs, intentions, hypotheticals. You could narrate your feelings and plans, which incorporates future and conditional language.
Like, I need to clean the room today, but I feel tired.
If I had more energy, I would go for a run, but maybe I will just read a book instead. That naturally requires you to use conditionals and different tenses in a completely safe space.
Or you could practice recounting a recent event to solidify your past tense. Describe what you did yesterday evening.
I went to the store, I bought milk and bread. After that, I watched a movie with my family.
The movie was terrible, but the popcorn was good.
Right. That simple story requires immediate retrieval of irregular past tense verbs, which is a common sticking point for a lot of learners.
So the overarching goal of this kind of spontaneous self-narration is to bridge the gap between knowing something abstractly and actually using it.
It's essential for describing your day, your plans, your feelings in English. It builds the scaffolding you need for a real-time conversation.
But the source material highlights this critical, subtle benefit, and we need to drill down on it. The major goal is getting used to hearing your own voice in English. Why does that sound so crucial?
When you speak a foreign language, especially if you have an accent, your voice can sound, well, unfamiliar, often a lower pitch, or just generally not quite right to your own ears.
Right.
And this unfamiliar sound can actually trigger anxiety because your brain registers it as performative or artificial rather than, natural self-expression.
It's almost like a mini internal identity crisis. You know it's your voice, but it sounds like someone else talking.
Exactly. And the source material is so clear on this. The more you speak to yourself, the easier it becomes to speak to others.
So if you're constantly narrating your life in English,
Your brain begins to normalize the sound of your own voice using that language. The unfamiliar becomes familiar.
and by the time you actually add a social partner into the mix, that cognitive load related to self-perception, do I sound weird? Is my accent distracting? It's significantly lower because you're already totally comfortable with the sound of your own English voice.
It connects self-familiarity directly to reduced social anxiety. This practice turns the act of speaking English socially from a big performance into just a continuation of your daily internal routine,
You're simply adding a listener to an activity you already do every single day.
which is an incredibly powerful, low-risk way to eliminate that performance anxiety before it even starts.
Okay, moving into section 5, we're looking at integrating English into your daily life. This section really dispels that common myth that you need these marathon 3-hour study sessions to get fluent.
The research is so strong on this. Consistency beats intensity every single time. Those long, intense study sessions often just lead to information overload, fatigue, and eventually burnout.
Whereas consistent, small, daily use keeps the language active, it reduces the fear of trying to remember things, and it reinforces the idea that English is a living tool for communication.
Not just a subject you study in a textbook.
So let's extract those low-effort, high-impact, actionable steps for daily contact that our listener can start doing immediately.
First, the technological integration habit. Change your phone's language to English.
Oh, that's a great one.
It forces you to interact with essential, practical vocabulary, settings, calendar entries, notifications. It's unavoidable exposure to modern, relevant terms.
Okay, second, passive immersion with active engagement. Watch English videos and read short English posts.
And find content you genuinely enjoy. Sports commentary, cooking shows, social media. Consume it in English. This keeps your motivation high because you're linking the language to pleasure.
And third, this is crucial, active repetition through shadowing. Repeat simple phrases you hear.
Yes. When you watch a video or hear a native speaker, just pause it and repeat a short sentence out loud. Try to mimic the cadence, the intonation. It's key for pronunciation, muscle memory, and for training your ear to your own voice.
And we need to circle back here to that central philosophy from before, grammar versus communication. We have to drill down again on the point that fluency comes from communication, not from following perfect rules.
This mindset needs to become automatic. So many learners will pause their speech to conduct this, rigorous internal grammar check,
Right.
which just leads to awkward silence, hesitation, and a broken flow. The source material encourages a more dynamic, real-time, problem-solving approach to speaking.
So if you forget a specific word, the advice is not to freeze.
No, use another one, or describe it. Don't stop the flow. If you can't remember the word remote control, you just say, the thing you used to change the TV channel.
The listener understands immediately, and the communication succeeds.
It's linguistic efficiency in action. Similarly, if you don't know the perfect, complex grammar structure, just use the simple grammar that you do know perfectly.
So if you're not sure about a complex passive construction, Just use a simple active sentence.
Right. The goal is to convey your meaning, not to impress anyone with complexity.
And this rapid, dynamic decision-making is the only real pathway to fluency. Fluency is clinically defined by the ability to maintain conversational flow and keep communicating, even with errors.
Not by a score on a grammar test.
By prioritizing the message and the flow, you train your brain to retrieve and deploy language quickly and efficiently. And the complexity. That'll increase naturally as the flow becomes comfortable.
If you wait for the day you know everything perfectly, you'll wait forever.
Yeah.
But if you commit to communicating today, even with simple communication, that simple act of speaking is the action that guarantees you'll improve tomorrow.
Simple, consistent output is the most effective study method. Okay, as we move into the final high-impact strategies, we have to talk about the critical role of the speaking environment. It is so important that you understand that your speaking partners are not just listeners. They are active components of your learning journey.
The importance of choosing your speaking partners carefully just cannot be overstated. Your conversational environment needs to be a safe space where vulnerability is accepted.
If you're constantly interacting with people who make you feel judged or nervous, who might even be what we could call language bullies, you are actively reinforcing the exact fear and anxiety you're trying to overcome.
The source material advises us to actively seek out people who are patient, kind, and supportive. This is like permission for self-protection.
If someone is constantly correcting you mid-sentence or rolling their eyes or showing impatience,
They are actively detrimental to your confidence, no matter how fluent or advanced they might be.
a supportive partner understands that errors are natural. They focus on celebrating the communication that was achieved.
Right. Look for partners who ask follow-up questions to understand your meaning, rather than interrupting you to fix a preposition.
And crucially, these partners don't have to be professional tutors. The source notes that even low-stakes conversations with friends, family members, or especially children can be super effective for boosting confidence.
Oh, practicing with children is phenomenal for reducing anxiety.
Why is that?
They naturally use simplified sentence structures. Their focus is purely on practical messages. What are we doing next? What are we playing? And because they are also in the process of acquiring language, they are inherently more patient and less judgmental of simple mistakes. It's an optimal environment for practicing basic commands and descriptions.
Okay, so let's shift from the external environment to the internal. Let's address the physiological reality of nervousness, the mind-body connection. You mentioned earlier that negative physical response to fear, the fast heart rate, cold hands, the mind going blank.
That is the classic evolutionarily ingrained fight or flight response, or in this case, the freeze response triggered by stress. The moment your brain perceives a threat, like public speaking or feeling judged, it releases stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. It prioritizes survival over complex language retrieval.
Which is why your brain goes blank. It's literally shutting down the high-level cognitive functions.
Yes.
So the idea that a simple breath can override this seems almost too easy. Did the source explain the neurochemistry behind that? It feels like this tiny physical trick is actually a huge cognitive shortcut.
It is incredibly simple, but it's scientifically effective. The remedy is to take one slow breath in and one slow breath out.
That's it.
That single conscious breath serves as a neurological reset button. It actively engages the parasympathetic nervous system, which, for the listener, is the system that tells your body to rest and digest. It counteracts the stress response.
So instead of the thought, I'm nervous, leading immediately to stress hormones flooding your system and causing your mind to go blank, the breath inserts a physical pause.
Exactly. It breaks the anxiety loop. By consciously controlling your breathing, you signal to your body that you are safe. This reduces the flow of stress hormones, which allows the rational part of your brain to re-engage the language center and lets you retrieve the words again.
That is the fastest way to overcome that frustrating moment of, I know the word, but I just can't say it.
It really is.
Okay, finally, we have to talk about the power of your internal narrative. We need to actively build a strong speaking mindset through conscious practice. And we're not talking about passive wishful thinking here.
No, this is a strategy for cognitive behavioral change. We're essentially talking about neurolinguistic programming, or NLP, which, simply put, is the study of how the language you use internally shapes your external reality and performance.
It's a direct strategy for retraining your subconscious to support your speaking goals instead of sabotaging them.
The self-talk we discussed earlier needs to become explicitly affirmative. You have to practice positive sentences, self-affirmations, to build that strong speaking mindset.
And these affirmations have to be practiced daily, repeated quietly in your mind, and spoken aloud often. They have to shift that internal narrative from paralyzing self-criticism to relentless self-encouragement.
If you consistently tell yourself, I am bad at this, your brain will believe it and it will actively block your output.
So let's run through the mandatory positive sentences our listeners should be incorporating into their daily routine. First, the fundamental statement of ability. I can speak English.
Then the acknowledgement of the process, shifting your focus from some distant finished product to your present day momentum. I am learning every day.
The crucial acceptance of errors, which neutralizes that central fear of failure. It's okay to make mistakes.
The commitment to the present moment and confidence, reinforcing that successful act of breathing. I feel more confident now.
And finally, the overarching philosophy that guarantees forward motion, the one that replaces the perfectionist's internal critic. I am improving.
The daily repetition of these phrases is the workout for your internal speaker. A strong, positive mindset built through intentional language is the necessary foundation that all the tactical strategies we've discussed have to rest on.
That brings us to the end of a very, very deep dive into conquering speaking fear.
It really does. We've covered everything from the global psychology of fear to the neurochemistry of deep breathing and the critical need to redefine mistakes as data points.
So let's briefly review the core philosophy that ties all these practical steps together. First, understand that fear is normal and it is manageable. Acknowledge it, but commit to action anyway.
Second, your daily action points are clear. Speak a little every day, even if it's just narrating your kitchen activities.
Use simple English. Prioritize getting the message across.
Third, please be patient with yourself. This is a journey of consistent effort, not an overnight sprint. And finally, the most important lesson of all, mistakes make you better.
They are the necessary friction points that illuminate the path forward and tell you exactly what you need to study next. Embrace the data they provide.
We base this entire discussion on the premise that you must keep speaking, keep learning, and keep believing in yourself. So we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to carry into your practice tomorrow.
If your goal is truly communication, not perfection, which, as we said, is the linguistic pathway to fluency, consider how fundamentally adopting the simple daily mantra, I am improving, shifts your focus.
It instantly pulls your attention away from judging past errors. I messed up that verb tense yesterday. I'm inadequate.
And it redirects your entire energy toward embracing future growth.
Yeah.
It becomes, what simple, successful communication can I achieve today to build on my momentum?
How does that commitment to belief, to believing in your own continuous incremental improvement, fundamentally change the effort and the vulnerability you are willing to put into speaking tomorrow?
It transforms the task from painful self-assessment into powerful self-investment. Think about that as you practice your next calm, confidence-building breath.
Take these tools, utilize these affirmations, and go find that low-stakes conversation, even if it's just with yourself in the mirror. Keep speaking, keep learning, and keep believing.
Thank you for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.